My name is Benji, and in today's video we're diving into FPL's fixture swings as we explore the best weeks to wildcard in 2024. We'll be looking at game weeks 1 through to game weeks 20, which is when you'll get your second wildcard. Thinking cap activated. First, I wanted to discuss the FPL Landscape game weeks 1 to 10. Oh, I should probably mention the color coding for the fixtures. So green is for fixtures you want to target and attack, gray is for average fixtures, and red is for tougher fixtures where you wouldn't want to own that player. Now, the Copa America, Euros, and Olympics means that players might not be back until the first international break, which is between game weeks 3 and 4. This would include players like Foden, Rodri, and possibly a Mateta if France reaches the Olympics final. The second international break falls between game weeks 7 and 8, and the third one, I believe, is sandwiched between game weeks 11 and game week 12. This is actually really important to discuss because international breaks are usually popular wildcard times for two main reasons. One, you actually have time to tinker and plan your wildcard for future game weeks. And two, if any players get injured during the break, you're able to deal with it or capitalize on it. For example, if a Haaland gets injured on international duty, since you're on wildcard, you can capitalize on it if you choose to buy Julian Alvarez. But anyways, for the first 3 to 4 weeks, we're honestly just playing a guessing game, right? We're making our decisions based on player form. That's all we really can do without a decent sample size of games to deduct from, right? We don't know which teams are the teams to go for because we need to see them playing. Some people might guess correctly, but more will guess wrong than right. Game week 5 onwards, I think it's definitely a different story. We should have a much better idea of who to target and who to avoid when the clubs have their full strength teams back. With that being said, let's take a peek into our first wildcard window. The first wildcard window is wildcard game week 4. Wildcard 4 is for managers with a higher risk appetite looking for an early upper hand on the masses. Starting with strategy, wildcard 4 involves owning either Haaland and Salah or Haaland no Salah. Either way, Haaland is basically a lock if you're going for this because of captaincy in game weeks 1 to 3. Haaland is the standout captain because of Ipswich at home in game week 2. Salah's best fixture in the first 3 is probably Brentford at home, and honestly, I think Brentford are a very decent defensive unit. What you need to do is find an alternative to Chelsea away for Haaland in game week 1. In terms of captaincy, this could be an Isak, a Bruno Fernandes, even a Heung-min Son, and then you captain Haaland game weeks 2 and 3. You can choose to own both, but I think the strength in this strategy is going for Haaland, then moving to Salah on your wildcard. So, why should you actually wildcard in game week 4? What are the benefits, right? Well, first, you'll be able to load up on Arsenal players as they've got 2 gorgeous home fixtures in the first 3. Wolves at home in game week 1 and Brighton at home in game week 3. You can also have a super high risk appetite and punt on a double Nottingham Forest attack, who have got the best starting 3 fixtures. Bournemouth at home, Southampton away, and then it's Wolves at home in game week 3. A Hudson-Odoi, a Chris Wood, and a Langa, they're all very solid prospects to start with. Because you're a wildcard 4, you're most likely selling your Forest players on your wildcard, so you don't really need to worry about, oh, I'm investing in bums who are in the relegation zone, right? You've got an exit plan. You could also choose to load up on Spurs with their first 3, Leicester away, then Everton at home, which is great for a Kulusevski, a Brendan Johnson. Obviously, you'll want Haaland, but Gvardiol is a nice option too if you really like City's early fixtures. Fulham have Leicester at home in game week 2 and Ipswich away in game week 3. I think that's pretty decent. So I would be considering an Iwobi or an Muniz. So that's who you should be targeting for game week 1. Let's now take a look at game week 4 onwards and who you actually should be considering on your wildcard. Straight off the bat, you see Haaland is playing Brentford at home, then Arsenal at home, then Newcastle away. The strategy for Wildcard 4 is based around Haaland for captaincy game weeks 1 to 3. Then on your wildcard, you'll most likely sell him and bring in Salah. I love this for captaincy as Salah has Forest at home in game week 4 and Bournemouth at home in game week 5. Chelsea's fixtures also really stick out. You're hopping on them for Bournemouth away fixture, which is a great entrance point. Then you're getting West Ham, Brighton at home, Forest at home, which I just think is a great run for a Palmer or even an Nkunku if you fancy that. I do think Crystal Palace have a set of sneaky fixtures as well. Excellent entrance point in game week 4 for Leicester City at home. The home games in that run are tough. They are tough. Man United, Liverpool and Spurs, but I've just seen enough of Glasner to know that he's not going to lose all of those games, especially when they're at Selhurst Park. United are a great pickup on a wildcard 4 because you can actually hold them longer term, as they've got some good fixture blocks game week 11 onwards. Like if you look at the United fixtures in the first 3, Fulham, then Brighton, then Liverpool, it's not amazing, but game week 4, you're getting Southampton, great entrance point, like we've said. Then you're getting Palace, Tottenham, Villa, and then Brentford, right? And game weeks 11 onwards, they have a really nice run. So I think picking up United asset if you're on wildcard 4 is a solid strategy. One of the downfalls to this strategy is the lack of information. Because you're wildcarding so early, the likelihood of you making poor decisions on your premium player selection or just player selection in general, that it's pretty high, right? Because you'll only have 3 weeks to assess who are the best long-term pickups. You could get burned, but overall, I just think it's a really strong wildcard window, definitely in the top 2 for me. If you rolled every game week up until your wildcard in game week 4, you'd have built up 3 transfers. Ideally, you'd want to roll again in game week 5 after your wildcard in game week 4, which would leave you with 4 free transfers, right? And it would leave you also with a completely new team for game week 6 because you've just wildcarded. This would mean that you can really hone in and attack Arsenal's good fixture patch game week 6 to 9, and you can also deal with FPL premium player swaps way more effectively. Let's move on to the next wildcard window. Personally, my favorite window, we'll be taking a look at wildcard game week 6 next. Wildcard 6 gives you a little bit more time and a couple more games to really judge which players you should be investing in long-term and short-term. There's also a pretty sizable fixture swing in game week 6. City's fixtures begin to turn into a really nice patch. Liverpool's worsen slightly, and Arsenal enter into their golden patch of Leicester and Southampton at home, then Bournemouth away. So, in this strategy, you either choose Haaland and Salah or Salah no Haaland. Salah is basically a lock due to game week 5 captaincy. So in game week 5, Salah plays Bournemouth at home when Haaland has Arsenal at home. But it also presents you with the opportunity to gain massively on Haaland no Salah teams, just because obviously Haaland has a tough fixture, Salah has a good one, right? For game week 1, a wildcard 6 plan would involve a triple up on both Liverpool and Newcastle. Liverpool play Ipswich, Brentford, Man United, Forest and Bournemouth in the first 5 fixtures, which is why they are top of most fixture tickers if you check Fantasy Football Scout or Fantasy Football Hub. I'm sure Liverpool are in the top 2 for game weeks 1 to 5. Newcastle also have a lot of good fixtures in their run, Southampton at home game week 1, then Bournemouth, Spurs, who they've been thrashing at home recently, then it's Wolves and Fulham away. So Newcastle really strong at home with good away fixtures. I think it's a very solid investment if you're on the strategy. I can at least think of 3 players who I'd want from Newcastle and Liverpool in this run. I'd want Trent, I want Trips, I'd want Gordon, I want Salah, I want Isak, maybe even Elliott and a Pope. Right, so there's a lot of really good picks that, at least for me, I really value. I also think Spurs are a decent pickup for wildcard 6 as well. 3 home games in the first 5, Arsenal, Brentford and Everton, with Newcastle and Leicester away around those fixtures. Spurs have been doing decent in preseason too. Wildcard 6 also gives you the chance to rotate your 7th and 8th attackers nicely, right? If you've been watching the channel, you'll know I'm a big fan of Adam Armstrong at the 5.5 million price point. If you have him with a solid 5th midfielder as your rotation on a wildcard 6 strategy, you should do very well. Armstrong and Semenyo rotation is a very interesting pair because look at the fixtures you're going to access. You're getting Forest away, Forest at home, then you're getting Everton away, then you got to choose between Man United at home, Chelsea at home, then you're getting Ipswich at home. So I think it's a really great rotation pair. If you're interested, maybe you should go there. If not, okay, whatever. One of the biggest advantages of Wildcard 6 is you don't need to load up on Arsenal and Man City. You can basically avoid City's opening fixtures. Same with Arsenal. Yes, both of them do have 1 to 2 good prime fixtures in the opening 5, but by tripling up on Newcastle and Liverpool, it gives you some real upside to chase against those backing City and Arsenal. Let's take a look at game week 6 and beyond, okay? So straight off the bat, you're going to want to take out Gordon and Trippier. If you've got them, get rid of your Newcastle because they're playing Man City and they've also got Arsenal close by in game week 10. Liverpool's fixtures also worsen, so this is where you'd switch Salah to Haaland, use the Salah funds for Haaland, because Haaland plays Newcastle, which isn't amazing in Game Week 6, but then it's Fulham at home, Wolves away, Southampton at home, Bournemouth away, and then Brighton away, compared to Salah, who plays Wolves away, Palace away, Chelsea at home, Arsenal away, then Brighton at home, then Villa away. Haaland's got the better fixtures for captaincy in this patch, which is why Salah to Haaland on Wildcard 6 makes a ton of sense. Now, let me paint you a picture. You've built a team in Game Week 1 that's set up for Wildcard 6. You've rolled 4 transfers in the first 5 game weeks. Now, you play your wildcard in Game Week 6, which gives you a fresh team ready to attack the fixture blocks, and you still got 4 transfers in your pocket, right? Now, what you could do is you could triple up on Arsenal on your wildcard for the Leicester, Southampton, and Bournemouth fixtures Game Week 6 to 8. Because you've got the banked transfers, you don't need to stress about dealing with Arsenal's fixture swing in Game Weeks 9, 10, and 11 when they play Liverpool, Newcastle, and Chelsea. Because you've prepared well, you have the ability to target a small fixture block and then pivot out of it with your free transfers. You could bring in White, Saka, and Havertz on your wildcard and then sell 2 of them in Game Week 10, right? It's not a big deal. I'm sure now that you can see the strength of kind of wildcarding with some decent amount of transfers in your back pocket, because it sets you up so well. You can maximize teams' fixtures without even having to worry about the exit plans. Who should you actually target on your wildcard 6? Now, the first team, obviously, Man City. We spoke about before how nice their fixture run is. I think this game week is where Foden and De Bruyne will come into the menu. If you really want to attack these prime fixtures for City, I would definitely recommend thinking about an attacking double up. Bournemouth is a great team to invest in for wildcard 6. Entrance point of Southampton at home, then it's Leicester away in Game Week 7. Now, Game Weeks 8 to 10, they do play Arsenal, Villa, and Man City, but after that City game, Bournemouth have some of the best fixtures out of any of the teams in the Prem, right? They're a really great long-term hold, so if you can rotate a Solanke or Semenyo to the bench for a couple game weeks, I think you'll find there's some really great value there. Brentford now. Now, Brentford, they've got really, really nice fixtures, Game Week 6 and onwards. You hop on Brentford for West Ham at home, then Wolves at home. Back-to-back home games, perfect. Game Week 8 is Man United away, but after that, it's Ipswich, Fulham, and Bournemouth. Definitely think about Flecken, Mbumo, even Owisa in this period. Other possible teams for investment are, Man United, who are a good investment for a long-term hold plan. Chelsea players on Wildcard 6 are good for short-term investment just because they've got back-to-back home games in Game Week 6 and 7. If you're not convinced by Arsenal, you could choose to use your free transfers to attack this Chelsea patch and then sell them off in Game Week 8. But the reason that this is currently the wildcard window I'm leaning towards the most is because it just gives you an extra 2 weeks of information ahead of the guys who will be wildcarding in Game Week 4, right? Which means there's less chance you pick a shitty wildcard. You've also got a couple more game weeks to build up team value, which will be super, super important this season. There is one drawback to this window, which is the fact it doesn't fall in the middle of an international break like Wildcard 4 does. But in my mind, I don't think it's really that big of a deal because there's so many teams with big fixture swings here and teams that are coming into nice patches. It just makes sense in my mind because I know I want Haaland from Game Week 7 onwards, but I'm not quite sure I want him before that. Let's move on to the next wildcard window. Wildcard Game Week 11 is next. This window gives you way more time to evaluate the FPL landscape, which teams are looking sharp, which teams are looking shit, and which premiums are really the guys you need to own. These questions will have better answers the more games that have been played, right? So you also now have more game weeks to build up your team value and your transfers to maximize your potential on the wildcard chip. The strategy with the premiums for Game Week 11 is either you go with Haaland no Salah or Salah no Haaland. For you to hold both of these guys for the combined 27.5 million, it's just too damaging to your entire squad. Other FPL players will gain points when Haaland or Salah blank, and you own both. I just think you'll need to evaluate who you genuinely will captain more over the first 10, and then you just pick that premium. For me, that premium is Erling Haaland for sure. Now, if you like this window, who should you be targeting? Okay, I would be targeting players that can play most weeks through Game Weeks 1 to 11, players from teams like Aston Villa, who plays Leicester, Everton, Wolves, Ipswich, Man U, Fulham, and Bournemouth in the first 10 game weeks. Another good team to start with for Wildcard 11 is Chelsea. They've got a really decent run after Man City in Game Week 1. They play Wolves, Palace, Bournemouth, West Ham, Brighton, Forest. Then in Game Week 8, their fixtures do worsen, but you can sell them either on your wildcard in 11 or before that, right? Liverpool are also a very solid investment. You know, we've already talked about their fixtures, very, very strong, and game weeks 1 to 10, it's a lot of appeal, right? Trent definitely on the menu, same with the likes of Darwin, Jota, Diaz. It just really depends on slots and who's in favor for starting the majority of the games. One problem with Wildcard 11 is that you'll need to be thinking longer term, which means you'll lose out to some managers who are making transfers, playing their wildcard earlier. They will have a better team than you for some game weeks, right? They might own players you wouldn't even think about touching because they've wildcarded and they're attacking smaller fixture blocks, which they can do because they've just built a new team, right? This is okay. Because if you're planning for a wildcard game week 11, you know that you're playing the long game, the patient game. You want to capitalize later down the line, which is fine. But it's just something you should keep in mind because you could get discouraged, you know, and I've seen that happen to some of my friends. So definitely keep an eye on that. So who should you actually target on Wildcard 11? Wildcard 11 allows you to invest heavily in Wolves, Bournemouth, Arsenal, Man United, and West Ham. If you look at Bournemouth, so their fixtures really turn for the best here. Brentford away, Brighton at home, Wolves away, then Spurs at home, Ipswich away. Pretty good fixture run. I think Brighton are a team you could own if you're on Wildcard 11, but just don't start them because they play Man City in Game Week 11. But after Game Week 11, Game Week 12 onwards, it's a very good option for a Joao Pedro, Mitoma, even the new guy, Minte. Brighton play Bournemouth, Southampton, Fulham, Leicester, and Palace in the next run, and I think that's very solid for them. So I would recommend benching a Brighton player if you're going for Wildcard 11 and then perhaps bring them into the team after that. The main strength with this wildcard window is the opportunity for gain it gives you. Salah plays Aston Villa away in Game Week 11. Haaland's got Brighton away. Even Chelsea have Arsenal at home in Game Week 11. So ideally, you're not going to captain a Haaland, a Salah, or a Palmer, which allows you to pick up players from Spurs, West Ham, Wolves, who all have really good fixtures in this block, and they've also got possible captaincy candidates, right? A drawback to this wildcard window is the fact that Chelsea away is a poor entrance point for Arsenal. Considering their fixtures, I'd assume you'd probably want 2 to 3 Arsenal players at this period, so the entrance point isn't great. However, I still think the Chelsea fixture is fine for Arsenal attackers. All in all, Wildcard 11 is a solid window if you want a little bit more time and information, and you also get to navigate a tricky fixture swing with a wildcard where others will only have free transfers to deal with it, right? I expect most of the engaged FPL managers to wildcard it within the first 10 game weeks. So if you still have that wildcard for game week 11, you're going to be able to deal with the big fixture swing a lot better than others. The fourth and final wildcard window is Game Week 17. This window is for managers looking to hold most of their chips into the second part of the season and really push for a good overall rank later in the season, whilst basically having most of your chips available every game week. You also have more time to evaluate which players and teams you want to target, as well as more time to build up your free transfers. The thing with Wildcard 17 is it requires major planning. You need to plan for the big fixture swings by having enough free transfers to deal with it, or at least you need to know what your rotation plan will be for players with bad fixtures. So, where's the gain in this wildcard window? Well, I can tell you that there's actually a big fixture swing in Game Week 17, and if you wildcard in 17, you're actually able to access Man United's fixtures Game Week 17 and onwards, who've got some really nice ones in there. You can also go hard on the Wolves investment in Game Week 11 and then sell them off on your wildcard 17 when they play Leicester away, which isn't, look, it's not the best exit fixture, but it's okay, right? You're not going to want to carry them any further. One thing you can do if you're planning for Wildcard 17 is own Spurs long term. You can also prepare for City triple up Game Week 17 to 22. You can lower your Arsenal ownership as their fixtures kind of turn into a worse patch. Definitely invest in Chelsea, definitely invest in Palace, sell your Ipswich, Villa, and Brighton guys, and just on your premium setup, it'll be similar to Wildcard 11. Like, out of Salah and Haaland, you're just going to need to pick one for the long run. Whoever you think you're going to end up captaining the most. The Son investment I really like for this strategy because long-term Spurs are a decent hold, and Son also gives you an extra captaincy option in some important weeks. Look, I really like this wildcard window, but it's just a bit too far away for me to say it's meta or optimal. Having wildcard 17 as a backup plan, for example, if your team is doing super well and legit you actually don't need a wildcard in any of the earlier game weeks, then I think wildcard 17 is a very sound strategy. I hope this video gave you some valuable insights into FPL's fixture swings and the best times to wildcard. If you're considering a wildcard in Game Week 6 like I am, be sure to check out my top 5 meta series where I show you the 5 most effective players in every position from Game Weeks 1 to 5. Peace.